The first sign that something was wrong was the look in her eyes. Not fear. Not sadness. Something worse. It was the look of a person who had already decided that nobody was coming to help. Before we begin, welcome to Ripple of Kindness. If you enjoy emotional stories about second chances, human connection, and unexpected moments that change lives, we're glad you're here. It was a rainy Thursday evening, and I had stopped at a small restaurant downtown after another exhausting day of job hunting. For nearly 8 months, I had been sending applications, attending interviews, and collecting rejection emails. My savings were disappearing, my confidence was fading, and every morning felt heavier than the last. I sat alone near the window, nursing a cup of coffee I could barely afford. Around me, people laughed, talked, and enjoyed their dinners. I tried not to think about how different my life looked from theirs. That was when I noticed her. She was sitting across from a man in an expensive suit. At first glance, they looked like any couple on a date. But the longer I watched, the more uncomfortable I became. The man barely allowed her to speak. Every time she opened her mouth, he interrupted. Every smile she attempted faded quickly. Her shoulders remained tense, and her eyes kept drifting toward the exit. Then something happened that made my stomach turn. The man reached across the table and grabbed her wrist. Not violently enough to cause a scene. Just enough to remind her that he believed he was in control. She immediately pulled away. I looked around, expecting someone else to notice. Nobody did. Everyone was too busy living their own lives. For several minutes, I argued with myself. It wasn't my business. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I should stay out of it. Then I saw her glance around the restaurant. Her eyes landed on me for less than a second. But in that second, I saw a silent plea. The kind of plea that doesn't need words. Before I could lose my nerve, I stood up and walked over. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I approached their table and smiled as naturally as I could. I acted as though I knew her. I apologized for interrupting and mentioned that her brother had been trying to reach her. It was a ridiculous lie, but it was all I could think of. For a moment, confusion crossed her face. Then understanding appeared. She immediately stood up. The man protested. He looked annoyed, suspicious, and angry all at once. But she didn't sit back down. Instead, she thanked me and followed me toward the front door. We walked out into the rain. Neither of us spoke until we were half a block away. Then she stopped. Tears filled her eyes. She wasn't crying because of the date. She was crying because someone had noticed. Sometimes that's all it takes. A stranger noticing. A stranger caring. A stranger stepping forward when everyone else looks away. Her name was Emily. As we stood beneath a storefront awning, she explained that the man wasn't a boyfriend. He was someone she had agreed to meet after months of pressure from friends who insisted she needed to start dating again. She had recently ended a long relationship that left deep emotional scars. The date had started badly and only became worse as the evening continued. The more she spoke, the more I realized how exhausted she was. Not physically. Emotionally. The kind of exhaustion that comes from disappointment after disappointment. The kind I knew very well. For the next 30 minutes, we talked while rain poured onto the empty streets. I told her about my endless search for work. She told me about rebuilding her life after heartbreak. Two strangers carrying different burdens somehow found comfort in sharing them. When we finally said goodbye, I assumed I would never see her again. Life doesn't usually work like movies. At least that's what I thought. The next morning, I woke up early for another interview. I wasn't particularly hopeful. By then, interviews had become routine disappointments. Still, I put on my only good suit and headed downtown. The company occupied the top floors of a modern glass building overlooking the city. The position was exactly what I needed. A stable salary. Benefits. A fresh start. I sat nervously in the waiting area while reviewing notes on my phone. When the receptionist finally called my name, I followed her down a long hallway. My palms were sweating. My heart raced. The door opened. And everything inside me froze. Sitting across the conference table was Emily. The woman from the restaurant. The woman from the terrible date. The woman I had helped less than 12 hours earlier. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. We simply stared. Shock filled both our faces. Then she smiled. Not the forced smile she wore the previous night. A genuine one. The interview began. To my surprise, neither of us mentioned the restaurant. We remained professional. She asked thoughtful questions. I answered honestly. But something felt different. For the first time in months, I wasn't trying to impress someone. I wasn't pretending to be perfect. I wasn't carefully rehearsing every sentence. I was simply myself. When the interview ended, I thanked her and prepared for another rejection. After all, that's what I had come to expect. 3 days passed. Then my phone rang. The company wanted to offer me the position. I nearly dropped the phone. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The relief was overwhelming. Months of uncertainty suddenly gave way to hope. Real hope. The kind that feels almost unbelievable after you've spent so long struggling. A week later, I started my first day. As I settled into my new role, I occasionally crossed paths with Emily. We remained friendly but professional. Still, there was an unspoken understanding between us. We both knew that our lives had unexpectedly intersected during vulnerable moments. Months passed. My financial situation improved. My confidence slowly returned. The dark cloud that had followed me for nearly a year finally began to lift. One evening, after work, Emily and I happened to leave the building at the same time. We ended up walking together. The conversation flowed naturally. For the first time, we spoke openly about that night at the restaurant. She admitted that she had almost canceled the date but forced herself to go because she was tired of feeling stuck. I admitted that I had almost ignored what I saw because I didn't want to get involved. We both laughed at how close we had come to never meeting. One small decision. One brief moment. That was all it took. As our friendship grew, I learned more about her. She volunteered at shelters. She checked on elderly neighbors. She believed that kindness mattered even when nobody was watching. The more I learned, the more I admired her. And the more I understood why helping her that night felt so important. She was exactly the kind of person the world needed more of. Eventually, friendship became something deeper. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Slowly. Naturally. Built on trust, respect, and shared understanding. We had both experienced disappointment. We had both carried invisible wounds. We had both spent time wondering whether things would ever get better. Together, we discovered that healing doesn't always arrive in grand ways. Sometimes it arrives through ordinary people. Through unexpected encounters. Through simple acts of courage. If this story has touched your heart so far, take a moment to share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear about a time when a small act of kindness changed your life. Years later, I still think about that rainy night. I think about how close I came to staying seated. How easy it would have been to look away. How different our lives might have been. People often imagine life-changing moments as dramatic events accompanied by music and certainty. The truth is much simpler. Most life-changing moments look ordinary while they're happening. A decision to speak. A decision to help. A decision to care. those choices ripple outward in ways we may never fully understand. As Emily and I stood together one evening watching the sunset from a city park, I realized something that had taken me years to learn. Kindness is never wasted. Even when it seems small. Even when nobody notices. Even when you expect nothing in return. Please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and whether you've ever experienced an unexpected act of kindness from a stranger. Because sometimes the person you help today may become part of your story tomorrow. And sometimes, when life feels darkest, a single moment of courage can open the door to an entirely new future. The night I saved a woman from a terrible date, I thought I was helping a stranger. I had no idea that by reaching out to her, I was also helping myself. And that simple act of kindness became the beginning of a second chance neither of us ever saw coming.